My name is Ted Knowlton, and I'm the Deputy Director at Wasatch Front Regional Council. And with me is
Julie Bjornstad, a long-range planner.
Thank you all for joining us tonight for this Wasatch Choice 2050 webinar. We know that there is a Utah Jazz game that kicks off in a little over 2 hours. This webinar is anticipated to be less than 1 hour, so you'll have plenty of time to get to where you want to be. We're going to show a PowerPoint presentation and talk through that. We're going to pause it a couple of times in the middle of that presentation for questions, and then Julie is going to show you a web-based tool that gives you the opportunity to provide some comments in detail on the Wasatch Choice 2050 scenarios. Last thing to note is that this webinar will be saved and put on YouTube as well. So with that, let's get started with the PowerPoint presentation. Again, I encourage you, as questions come up, go ahead and enter those into the chat window. All right, Wasatch Front Regional Council is a metropolitan planning organization, which means that we serve the transportation planning needs for the area that extends from Brigham City on the north, that you can see, into Weber County, Davis County, and Salt Lake County. And we do the transportation planning for that area. We also work with the counties of Morgan and Tooele County as well. Overall, our mission is to build consensus and develop visions and plans for a well-functioning, multimodal transportation system, livable communities, a strong economy, and a healthy environment. Wasatch Front Regional Council is one of 4 metropolitan planning organizations. We have one in each of the metro areas in the state, in the Cache Valley, in the Ogden-Layton metro area, in the Salt Lake Valley metro area. Those 2 we serve at Wasatch Front. We work very closely with the Mountain Land Association of Governments in Utah County, and then there's the Dixie MPO down in the St. George area. UDOT serves the transportation planning needs for the rural areas in between. WFRC coordinates very closely with UDOT and UTA in all of our planning activities. And of course with local governments whom we serve. Now, you hear this phrase, Wasatch Choice 2050. 2050, by 2050, just in the WFRC area, we might see an additional 1.5 million people. That's kind of like adding a city the size of Riverton or Bountiful every year. So with that growth comes a lot of challenges. There's challenges that we're all familiar with, like how do we maintain communities as livable and healthy places? How do we make sure that people can get to a variety of economic and educational opportunities easily? What is traffic going to be like in the future? Will people have transportation choices? What will the character and safety of our streets be? A key concern, of course, in Utah is the cleanliness of our air. How much will housing cost? How much will it cost to get around as well? That's a key issue that's looming in Utah today. How fiscally solvent will our communities be, and how can they be better prepared? What will the character of our environment be like? What will we do with our key resources like water, agricultural land? Will we have ample parks and open spaces and recreational opportunities in our communities? These are not just challenges that we have to face. These are also 10 goals that have been adopted by the Wasatch Front Regional Council, which is a group of elected officials from local governments, both cities and counties in our area. So within that context of rapid growth and a desire to work towards those 10 goals that I just outlined, we all are working on something called the Wasatch Choice 2050. Ultimately, that is a grassroots developed growth strategy that is built through input from, you see those blue circles, cities and counties, the private sector, residents, UDOT and UTA, facilitated by Wasatch Front Regional Council. Developing a strategy for coordinated, focused and coordinated buildings and infrastructure. How do buildings and infrastructure work well together? And that strategy aimed at ultimately improving quality of life, even as the Wasatch Front grows, as it surely is. So you could think of the Wasatch Choice 2050 as an overarching vision of where we want to be. What is the long-term future that we all would like to accomplish, and how do we get there in general? That then is broken down into more detailed plans of action that include the long-range transportation plan, known as the Regional Transportation Plan. And then as after that plan is implemented through something called the Transportation Improvement Plan or Program, the TIP. And those three pieces are key responsibilities of WFRC. So the purpose of this webinar is to introduce the Wasatch Choice 2050 scenarios, to highlight opportunities that you have to provide feedback on those scenarios, and to outline next steps in the Wasatch Choice 2050 process. Again, the process to develop a vision for how buildings and infrastructure are coordinated within our region. Wasatch Choice 2050 is being developed. First, our council established goals. That was in part based on community conversations around the region where we heard the kinds of key outcomes that city and county leaders wanted to work towards. Our board heard that and then established those 10 goals that you saw. We then developed, and by we, I mean local governments and all of those different stakeholders that you saw listed, UDOT and UTA, residents, gave us a variety of ideas that we've captured into 2050 scenarios, and we're going to go over those. And we are in the process of getting feedback on those scenarios and evaluating which ideas work better than others within these three packages. As we move forward, we move into that middle column of choose, where we will start to build the best performing and most well-received pieces into one preferred scenario, which will then be adopted by our council. After that, then we move into developing the regional transportation plan, which involves prioritizing transportation projects, assessing the financial, our financial situation, our ability to pay for transportation projects over time, and to wrap up the a depiction of the impacts and benefits of the regional transportation plan as well. And with that, let me see here. I apologize. I thought about looking at your questions, but we're going to get to those in just a second. So ultimately, this process, again, it involves cities and counties, residents, transportation partners that I mentioned, community-based organizations, environmental agencies, higher educational institutions, and nonprofits. It's a transparent and grassroots effort that we are working to facilitate. So I'm going to pause there, and let's see if there are questions in the queue. No questions, which means that we are doing a fabulous job of being really clear. So we will keep on keeping on. Okay, so the Wasatch Choice 2050 scenarios, again, are an effort to explore the long-term impacts of different development pattern and infrastructure decisions. You see that map on the left. We had local conversations in each of those different areas last year, and that was the foundation upon which these scenarios have been developed. So these are grassroots derived. The three scenarios share the same amount of total county population, one county to the next, the same also number of county jobs, and they have the same rough transportation expenditures between now and 2050. The concept here is that to the extent their performance varies, it's not because of the amount of growth or the amount of money we spent, but rather based on how we have decided to grow, what kind of growth happens, what kind of infrastructure happens, and how those two things relate to each other. As you look at scenario 1, what you'll note is that the main thing to note about scenario 1 is that that is the picture of our current plans today. These are cartoons, and Julie later in the webinar is going to show you how you can look at the details of these scenarios, what specific transportation projects and development pattern ideas are explored in the metro area or in your neck of the woods. And so as you do that, note that scenario 1 again is capturing your local general plan and that of every community in the region and the currently adopted WFRC transportation plan. On this, black is roads, blue is public transportation, green is active transportation, and those circles represent different kinds of growth centers: regional center, village center, and corridor. Should I go into detail on this slide? Okay, so let's take a look at scenario 2 and 3, and you will see these cartoons come back to you. But first, a touch more on scenario 1. Actually, this is really consistent with what I had said. Development trends continue similar to today. We can get a picture of what that might mean for our region, consistent with plans. Okay, now scenario 2. These are some of the themes that we heard in our meetings with across the region a year ago. It contemplates more growth occurring in larger regional centers, by which we mean places like downtown Salt Lake City, Farmington Station, Ogden's downtown, downtown Sandy, and new downtowns like Daybreak in South Jordan. With that additional growth in regional centers, not all of the growth, but just a focus of it, we link development with more connected streets, new streets, and we have a focus on high capacity rail and fixed bus service, more focus on those two things than we see in the current plan. And then scenario 3, again, building on themes that we have heard from the public and stakeholder process, we would see more growth in smaller dispersed village centers. These are places like Bountiful's Main Street or Salt Lake City's 9th East and 9th South Center. But could we see more village centers grow in more places across the region? Together with that concept, those smaller dispersed centers might be served in this scenario by major roads and on the transit. So we'd see more growth in larger roads, widening of major roads. And on the transit side, unlike scenario 2, this one focuses more on additional frequent bus service. Okay, and then let me go back to scenario 2 and talk about the trails. The trail aspect on scenario 2, you can see the green, focuses on connecting residents and employees with high capacity transit, especially within those larger regional centers. And you can see that with the crisscross pattern of green trails there within the regional centers. Now, as we move back to scenario 3 and look at trails again, remember trails is the green. It focuses more on larger separated trails. Here's another overview of these 3 scenarios. This shows you how the transportation dollars might be spent and how they differ from one scenario to the next. Remember, the total pie, the total amount of transportation investment is roughly the same. But in scenario 2, as you compare it to scenario 1, you'd see less spending on roadway projects, 58 to 44, and more spending on transit, more expansion of rail and bus rapid transit. And then as you move to scenario 3, you'll see it's approximately the same road spending as currently contemplated in the adopted plan, but a lot of growth in transit operating costs. What that would mean is more frequent bus service, more bus lines, and that kind of benefit to our region. And so these represent distinct choices also with regard to infrastructure in addition to our growth patterns. I'm going to pause there, Scott, and see if there are any questions that we should answer. Are there any questions? Okay. Now, Julia's going to highlight how you can learn about the scenario impacts, but the question is not or the purpose of the scenarios is not simply to lay out different options for how growth and infrastructure might unfold and then ask, what do you like? But to inform that input with a sense of how those different growth and infrastructure concepts might perform, again, relative to those 10 goals that you heard about that were adopted by the WFRC Council. And those include key questions like, what are the housing choices in the scenario? How well can people get to parks and open space? What kind of access to jobs and educational opportunities might they have? And you see the other questions up there as well. So we'll highlight where you can see those impacts in the visualization tool. And so with that, I'm going to hand the baton over to Julie B. Take it away, Julie.
So we've created an online visualization tool that you can access about the Wasatch Choice 2050 scenarios. This is a screenshot of what that tool looks like. If you would like to go to this website either now or after the webinar, the web address that you would do that from is wasatchchoice.com/scenarios. And we'll reiterate that again at the end of the presentation. So one moment while I navigate back to the tool. So if you go to wasatchchoice.com/scenarios, it takes you to information page that immediately you can start viewing the scenarios based on the region or individual counties that we serve through our transportation planning process. If you scroll down, you'll find more information about the process that we are going through to develop the Wasatch Choice 2050 vision, as well as information about the scenarios in general, and then a little bit about the background of the process. Going back up to the top, we'll just click on the regional scenarios instead of going through each individual county. And so when you do that, it brings you to the website that I showed earlier. And this website works through scrolling. So you can just scroll through and we'll present information to you about the 10 goals that our Wasatch Front Regional Council adopted last October that Ted mentioned before. If you continue to scroll, you'll get more detailed information about the 3 scenarios that we've been talking about and we would like your feedback on. And then through this map, you can see where we have planned roadway, public transit, and active transportation projects, as well as where we would expect more development to occur. As you scroll, you'll find this pop-up window that will explain a little bit more about each of the different transportation choices, as well as information about how we expect the region to grow through new development. You can also on this map zoom in using these keys, so you can kind of explore a little bit more here and see what types of projects we have. But as you continue to scroll, you'll see the different scenarios pop up again with information about each scenario changing as you scroll through the website. Then we present to you the information about how well each of the scenarios is performing based on those 10 adopted goals. And through each of the 10 adopted goals, we show you 5 cases. The first case, 2014 existing, is basically what we expect to be happening today on the ground. So what you're experiencing as you travel throughout the region. The no action scenario is a long-term 2050 scenario in which we construct no more roadway projects or transportation projects past 2023. So basically, if we did nothing between now and 2050, what would happen? And additionally, scenarios 1, 2, and 3 are the ones that you have explored already by the time you've gotten to this page.
Julie, we have a question. The question comes from Richard. And the question is it assuming that through scenario 2, with a lot of capital costs in the transit category, that the mode would be light rail transit?
It is not the assumption that all new transit capital projects would be light rail transit, such as tracks. It's also assuming that we would build more bus rapid transit, otherwise known as BRT. Currently, the BRT that is operating within the region is on 35th South. There are other transit project or BRT projects being planned in Provo and Orem, as well as Ogden. And additionally, would be an extension of Front Runner or commuter rail. That would be a mixture of providing longer hours of service as well as more frequent service between those stops.
And the capital cost on the commuter rail for that would be related to providing 2 tracks along much of the length of commuter rail. We have a second question from Troy. Within the plan, are you defining regional centers, town centers, etc.? And the answer is we will be. We will be defining what is meant by those terms in things like what kind of densities would be typical, what's the floor to area ratio of buildings that you might see, what kind of land uses would be typical, and what kind of catchment area would these different centers have. So we will be doing that. There is not a lot of detail to date about that, but what we have been using is talking about centers that we have like each of those types, regional centers and village centers and town centers in our region today. Good question.
Thank you for your question so far. Going back to the visualization tool, as you scroll through the performance measure section, there's a little bit of there's the write-up of what we're measuring based on the goal. So in this case, this is the livable and healthy communities, and we're measuring that through walkability and measuring how many miles of commercial streets are considered walkable based on the type of environment that they are in. And you can see that we increase between a no action and existing based on the scenarios. So as we scroll through, you'll see we're measuring destination access, benefits to freight, benefits to auto travel time, the ability to choose what type of transportation you would like to take, whether that's driving, taking transit, being able to bike or walk, how much transit is being used, the impacts to our air quality, and the impacts to our land consumption, as well as the cost of living, the impacts to our local budgets and access to recreation, and finally, water use. On this website that I'm showing you now is the regional benefits, but if you clicked on each one of those individual counties, Salt Lake County, Davis County, Weber and Box Elder counties, you would find more refined performance measures for each individual county. We're just showing you on the regional scale. And I believe that there's another question that came in.
Question is from Annie. What types of road projects are intended in scenario 1? It was unclear from the diagram what was being added.
The road projects in scenario 1, our current regional transportation plan, has a lot of variety in it. There's everything from widening of some of our arterials, such as 90th South or 54th South, to better management of our freeway system, so more ramp metering, for instance, as well as operational projects. And those operational projects can be anything from access management, meaning consolidation of driveways, making it safer to use the road through medians, or better signal timing coordination. Those types of projects are in all three scenarios. In scenario 1, it's more of a blend of all the scenarios and less of a dominant type than the other 2 scenarios.
Julie, will you go back to the map section, and just as these questions have related to what kind of transportation improvements, as a reminder, you can see the details on what transportation ideas are being explored directly through the visualization tool that Julie is exploring here.
Yeah. We'll go back down to the comment section. So after the performance measures, after you scroll through the performance measures, we give you 2 ways of providing comments to us. We do go through each individual comment, and they'll be included also in the appendix of the plan when the plan is adopted. So we are taking your comments seriously, and they are incorporated into the plan. But as you scroll through, the first way you can leave us comments is through an interactive map, where you can both explore the types of projects that we're planning as well as leave us comments. And the types of ways that you can explore, if you click on these layers and click down on the menu, you'll see all the different types of projects. So we have transit, highway, and by point projects, we simply mean things that are at a specific location. So a highway point project would be an interchange improvement, for instance. A transit point project would be a new station or a park and ride lot, for instance. When we say line projects, we simply mean new bus routes, new light rail lines, new roadway improvements.
Do you want to do one of those drops?
Yeah, and I'll drop down the highway line type, since we were just, no, that's that one. Well.
Okay, so that's just showing you what the legend looks like.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So as you scroll in, you can see the different types of projects that are happening, and where these blobs are, where we're expecting different land use changes to occur. So once you, and you can click on scenario 1, and you can also see those same things on scenario 2. So for the question of what types of projects are in each of the scenarios, feel free to click through there, and you can explore in more detail what types of projects are happening in your area. Just one final note, when we say first mile, last mile improvements, we mean specifically connections for walking and biking to transit stations and transit stops. To leave a comment, you would just click on this push pin, and it would bring up, oh yeah. Apparently I'm having user error here. Sorry, this is my fault. You click on the comment, and you can see the different types of comments you can leave us for each of the transportation choices, for land use, for open space, or other comments. And you would just click on that, and then click on the map where you would like to leave the comment, and you can leave us the comment. And we check this almost daily, so as soon as you leave the comment, we would be reading it. As you scroll further down, there's just one last way of providing comments, and that's through online survey you can take, where we ask you your preferences for different types of transportation facilities and your preference for how you would like growth to occur. So if you'd like to leave a specific comment based on the map, we have that way. And if you'd like to leave a general comment on how you like to see the region grow and unfold over the next 30 or so years, the survey is a great way to do that. And you can also leave an open-ended comment at the end of the survey. So that's a little bit about additional ways to give us feedback after this webinar. And yeah, I don't know if we want to check for comments again or questions again.
No questions at this time. Okay, great. So Julie is going to go back to our looking at our beautiful faces. Hi. All right, and so we'll wrap up now. And if you have any final questions, go ahead and enter those. We'll check one last time. Here's where we're headed. We're starting to bring these comments together and just pencil initial ideas for a preferred scenario. But we're going to be taking comment for through July on these scenarios. So you are welcome, of course, to provide comments through what Julie introduced tonight. In addition, you can attend a public open house that we anticipate holding in July. The date has not yet been set. We will send notices to those that have registered for this webinar, but you can always check WFRC.org or WasatchChoice.com. It is .com, yes? Yeah, of course it is. And to learn about upcoming events as well. Now that's for the scenario round. Next year, we will be focusing on getting comments on a draft preferred scenario, or if you will, the vision itself. So we will take that out and get a lot of feedback from all of the different stakeholders that we've talked about today. And that will be an opportunity to provide feedback as well. At the end of the day, the vision shapes the regional transportation plan, which is the formal plan for how transit, roads, and active transportation investments are made throughout the region. And it is a chance for local governments to say, here is the future that we want to create in our cities as we think about our role within the region as a whole. And so that is the Wasatch Choice 2050, and we look forward to working with you as we move forward in this process. I'm going to do one last check for any questions before we wrap up. Okay, no more questions. Julie, do you have any closing things to say?
No, I'm just going to share again the website location in case you didn't get a chance to mark it down. So if you would like to go to wasatchchoice.com/scenarios, you can explore in more detail the process we've gone through and provide us comments both on projects and in general on how you'd like to see the region grow.
Thank you so much. And with that, we are adjourned. Take care, everybody. Have a great evening.